So in a Wall Street Journal op-ed, Republican Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin warns the spending blowout imposes costs beyond the enormous price tag. He joins me now. Senator, good to have you here. The amount of money and the deficit is absolutely unbelievable. Did you ever anticipate that they would make this effort, that the Biden administration would go this far this quickly?
No, but let's face it, it's probably not surprising. They really are enacting a radical and 100% partisan agenda here, and it's going to bankrupt this nation. When I came to Congress in 2011, we were $14 trillion in debt. Now we're $28 trillion in debt, and that doesn't include the $1.9 trillion that they just passed in terms of a fifth or sixth COVID relief bill. And now they're talking about over $2 trillion for an infrastructure bill. Probably about 5% of that is for roads and bridges, no more than 20% of what most people define as true infrastructure. The rest is going to be spent, and not in a very productive ways from my standpoint.
So you hear what President Biden is saying, and it's echoed by Rahm Emanuel and others, that you guys are just too slow to catch up with the new definition of bipartisanship, and that what it really means is if you've got Republican governors and mayors across the country, that's bipartisanship. But that you all are sort of not in sync with where the rest of the country is. What do you say to that, Senator?
Well, everybody loves free money. I mean, I realize that's a very bipartisan thing to support. But the problem is again, we're $28 trillion in debt. We don't have an unlimited checking account. We are mortgaging our children's future. I think it's immoral. But that was the point of my Wall Street Journal op-ed today is nobody really knows where all this money gets spent. Remember, President Obama had his $800 billion stimulus. Probably no more than $100 billion of that went toward infrastructure. Remember, you sheepishly said those projects really weren't all that shovel ready. So this money will be frittered away, but it's going to be added to the debt burden of our children.
It's a great point. I mean, when you look at infrastructure and you look at what it would take, there is a lot that people could agree on, and it probably falls into the maybe $800 billion mark to do a real infrastructure package. And you heard from your colleague in the piece that Jackie Heinrich did. Do you have any dream reality scenario where that kind of infrastructure package that, is where both sides intersect will ever happen, will ever come to fruition?
Well, again, just listening to people talk in the conference, I think that's entirely possible if it's reasonable, if we know exactly where the money is going to be spent. It's spent on real infrastructure, places where it's needed, and if it's paid for through things like user fees and toll roads. And, there's a host of ways of actually paying for this. And if you are going to borrow money, at least if you're borrowing money on real infrastructure that's going to last for 20 or 30 or 40 years, that makes sense. But the problem is we've already committed to borrowing about $6 trillion since the COVID recession began, and there's just no end in sight, and it's completely irresponsible.
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of COVID money that hasn't been spent yet, a ton that hasn't been spent in the school systems yet, and we still can't get the schools open. I mean, I think a lot of people look at Republicans, though, and they say, you weren't really that cautious about where the money was going in the last administration. So you sort of lose your right to say that now you want to rein in spending and be fiscally responsible. What do you say to that?
Well, first of all, we had corporate tax cuts that really juiced our economy and produced a record economy. And the fact of the matter is we had COVID and we had to respond to that. But we should probably repurpose what is unspent. I'm glad you pointed that out. When we passed the $1.9 trillion COVID relief, there's $1 trillion still unspent. Spend that first.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable. It's hard to imagine anybody running a business or a household this way. Trillions of dollars that are still not designated, taxpayer dollars that are already allocated. Thank you very much, Senator. Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Have a good day.
You too.